Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Diary of a Lawyer. And today I want to briefly uh, talk about the charging of a police officer in France with a voluntary killing, a charge of voluntary killing of a 17-year-old Sahel who was uh, apparently shot point blank, according to the videos released and witnesses in over a traffic infraction. Now, this has led to protests all over the country which have turned violent and has led to hundreds of people being arrested. Protesters erected barricades, lit fires, and shot fireworks at police in French streets overnight as tensions grew over the deadly police shooting of a 17-year-old that has shocked not just the nation but the whole world. Now, armored police vehicles, according to public reports and media reports such as NPR, rammed through the charred remains of cars that had been flipped and set ablaze in the northern western Paris suburb of Nanterre, where police officers shot a teen identified only by his first name, Nahel. Now, on the other side of Paris, protests lit a fire at the city hall of the suburb of Clichy-sous-Bois and set a bus depot ablaze in Aubervilliers. The French capital also saw fires and some stores ransacked. In the Mediterranean port city of Marseille, which has a huge population of people of African descent, in particular North Africa, police reportedly sought to disperse violent groups in the city center, according to authorities. Now, the president, Macron, planned to leave an EU summit in Brussels where France plays a major role in European policymaking to return to Paris and hold an emergency security meeting Friday. Now, some 40,000 police officers were deployed to quell the protests, and hundreds were detained. It's also reported around 200 police officers were injured, according to a police spokesperson. Schools, town halls, and police stations also faced protesters, and the Interior Minister Gerard Damanin on Friday denounced what he called a night of rare violence, and his office described the arrest as a sharp increase on previous operations as part of an overall government effort to be extremely firm with rioters, according to him. Effectively, the government has stopped short of declaring a state of emergency, which is a measure taken to quell weeks of rioting around France that followed the accidental death of two boys fleeing police in 2005. So this is not isolated, as we have seen other incidents, but it's not just the France. We see other similar incidents in other Western countries. The police officer accused of pulling the trigger Tuesday was handed a preliminary charge of voluntary homicide after the prosecutor, Pascal Prache, said his initial investigation led him to conclude the conditions of the legal use of the weapon were not met. Preliminary charges mean investigating magistrates strongly suspect wrongdoing but need to investigate more before sending a case to trial. To date, I haven't seen the identity and the names of the police officer charged with voluntary homicide. But his lawyer, speaking on French TV channel, said the officer was sorry and devastated. The officer did what he thought was necessary in the moment, Attorney Laurent Froquelait told the news outlet, which is unfathomable. The shooting captured on video shocked France and start up long simmering tensions between police and young people in housing projects and other disadvantaged neighborhoods. The teenager's family and their lawyers haven't said the police shooting was race-related, and they didn't release his surname or details about him. Still, anti-racism activists renew their complaints about police behavior, and some are quoted as saying that they have to go beyond, saying that things need to calm down, said Dominic Sopo, head of the campaign group SOS Racism. And he says that the issue here is how do we make it so that we have a police force that when they see blacks and Arabs, don't need to shout at them, use racist terms against them, and in some cases, shoot them in the head. In Nantes, a peaceful march Thursday afternoon in honor of Sahel was followed by escalating confrontations, with smoke billowing from cars and garbage bins set ablaze. Tensions also rose in places across France throughout the day, and in the usually tranquil Pyrenees town of Pau in southwestern France, according to NPR, a Molotov cocktail was thrown at a police officer, and vehicles were set on fire in Toulouse, and a tramway train was torched in the suburb of Lyon, police said. There are other protests in other towns like Clermont and other places, and curfew was announced in the town of Neuilly-sur-Marne in the eastern suburbs. Now, the unrest extended as far as Brussels, the Belgian capital city, an EU administrative hub where about a dozen people were detained during scuffles related to the shooting in France. Police spokeswoman Ivan Kia said that several fires were brought under control. Now, according to some of the sketchy facts we know, the Nanterre prosecutor says the officers tried to stop Nahel because he looked so young and was driving a Mercedes with Porsche license plates in a bus lane. He allegedly ran a red light to avoid being stopped, then got stuck in traffic. Both officers say they drew their guns to prevent him from fleeing. The officer who fired the shot said he had feared he and his colleague or someone else could be hit by the car, according to Prash. Now that is inexplicable. So he shot the boy because he thought the car would hit him. We'll just leave that there. So the scenes in France suburbs echoed 2005 when the losses of life of two 15-year-old and a 17-year-old Buona Traore and Zaid Bena led to 3 weeks of riots, exposing anger and resentment in various housing neighborhoods. The boys were electrocuted after hiding from police in a power substation in Clichy-sous-Bois. Now, deadly use of firearms is less common in France than in other countries like the US, although several people have been killed or been wounded by French police in recent years, which has prompted demands for more accountability. According to NPR, France also saw protests against racial injustice after George Floyd's killing by police in Minnesota. A police spokesperson said 13 people who didn't comply with traffic stops were fatally shot by police last year. This year, 3 people, including Nahel, have died in similar circumstances. Another tragic story and senseless loss of life, a 17-year-old Nahel over a traffic infraction. Again, we shall watch developments and we'll focus on the charges that the prosecutor has brought on the officer that killed Nahel of voluntary homicide, because he believes that the conditions for the legal use of the weapon were not met. And so, there we shall leave it on yet another episode of The Dialogue of a Lawyer, and we shall speak again. Thanks for listening. Thank you. Bye.